Canada has announced a 2-year cap on the intake of foreign students.
The federal government will cap the number of student permits over the next 2 years.
Today, early morning, the Immigration Minister of Canada has made 3 major announcements that is going to shape and shake the world of international students going forward in Canada. In this video, we are going to talk exactly about that. The first announcement is on the cap of the total number of study permits that would be issued every year by Canada. The second announcement is about the postgraduate work permit. In certain conditions, international students would not be getting the postgraduate work permit. So if you complete your studies, you won't be able to work in Canada after that. We'll talk about that in detail. And the third announcement is about the spousal work permit. In certain situations, international students would not be able to apply for the spousal work permit. From the last couple of months, we were actually expecting some stricter measures by the government of Canada. This wasn't really a surprise, but then the magnitude of these announcements and the impact that it is going to have for the international students going forward is going to be huge. We'll get into the depth of these announcements so that you understand what are those details all about. Don't go anywhere, I'll be right back. If you want to apply for the study permit of Canada this year or the next, you are not going to like these announcements that the government of Canada has made today. But in this video, let's start with the first major announcement that came about: the cap on the total number of study permits that Canada will approve every year. So the cap on the approved study permits for 2024 would be 360,000, which is actually 35% less than the total number of study permits approved last year in 2023. So that is actually a significant decline, which means that now the filtering criteria of the colleges who would have a limited quota would be slightly difficult because they now have a cap. They don't have an unlimited number of students that they can enroll. Having said that, they've also declared that this number of 360,000 would actually be divided among different provinces and territories, which means that the provinces which already have a lot of international students would actually get the smaller number of international students. They would approve lesser study permits for those provinces. Ontario is one of them. They're expecting that for 2024, there would be around 50% reduction in the number of study permits that would be issued for Ontario colleges. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? We'll talk all about it in the next video. But for today, we are talking only about facts, only about these announcements that they have made today. They've also introduced a new rule that starting today, if you're applying for a study permit, then you need to apply with a provincial attestation letter. Now, what is that letter? What is the process all about? We really don't know about it. It will probably differ from one province to the other. We'll discuss all about this as and when we get to know more about these things later. Okay, now before all of you start panicking, let me tell you some exemptions. This does not apply to all of those people who have already got the study permit. It does not apply to study permit renewals as well. And also it does not apply for all those who want to pursue master's or doctoral degree in Canada. But then if you're applying for a diploma or a bachelor's degree or maybe some certificate, then these rules would apply for you. The limit for 2025 hasn't been announced yet. Probably they would announce it later this year or maybe earlier next year. Okay, so we have talked about the first announcement. Now let's talk about the second big announcement. It is about the spousal work permits for international students. We were actually expecting the first announcement, not exactly in the form that it actually came, but we were actually expecting some sort of cap, but we were not expecting this particular announcement. So as of now, all the international students can apply for the spousal work permit, which means that while they're studying in Canada, their spouse can work in the meanwhile. But in the coming weeks, this would only be possible if you're applying for a master's or a doctorate degree. For everyone else, it won't be possible. Now, they haven't announced any dates here, but it may be coming in maybe a couple of weeks' time. So if you were actually one of them who was actually thinking of applying for the spousal work permit while you're studying here in Canada on any study permit, then in that case, you should definitely go ahead to apply for it right away. Don't waste any more time because in the weeks to come, it is definitely not going to be possible for anyone who has not come here to study for master's or doctorate degree. This announcement was very similar to what was actually announced in UK, I think last month. Both the countries are actually facing similar kind of problems, so probably Canada thought it's a good idea to go for the same solution that UK is going for. So whatever it is, we have talked about the second announcement. Now let's talk about the third announcement, which is about the postgraduate work permit. As we all know, most of the students actually come to Canada to work here and later transition to permanent residency and then citizenship. I really don't know of anyone who came to Canada just to study and then go back to their home country. So that's why this announcement is very important, because it's about PGWP. Postgraduate work permit actually legally entitles you to work in Canada. So they have announced that all the students who enroll for any study program in private colleges that has been licensed to deliver the curriculum of an associated public college, all those students would not be given a PGWP after completing their studies. So what happens is that a lot of students actually enroll in private colleges. For the first year they study in these colleges. Maybe in the next year they actually go to the public colleges. Eventually they get the degree or the diploma or the certificate from that public college or the university. So all those students would not be getting the postgraduate work permit if you're coming in from September 1st, 2024 or later, which means the fall season of this year, which is the biggest intake of any year. So now if you wish to study in Canada, you should ensure that you are applying for a public college or a university, not for the private colleges, because you would not be getting the postgraduate work permit. And if you're not entitled to work after you pass out from your college, then eventually after your studies you need to pack your bags and go back to your home country. So these were the three big announcements. If you are a student who actually wants to come to Canada in 2024 or 25 onwards, you definitely won't like any of these announcements. But there's a silver lining to it. There's one more small announcement that came along with the last one, which is about the 3-year postgraduate work permit. They've said that the graduates of masters or any short graduate level programs would actually now get 3-year work permit, the 3-year PGWP for all those students, which is actually a good deal, because all those students who actually came here, let's say for a 1-year master's degree, you would only get 1-year work permit, but going forward you would get 3 years work permit, which would enable you to score more points, which would make the life a lot easier for you if you want to apply for permanent residency. I'll try to talk about this point, the benefits, in the next couple of videos. In the last 1 or 2 quarters, we have seen the Government of Canada take a totally different stance about international students in Canada than it had 6 months before. We'll talk about the reasons. We'll talk about the options that you have now to study in Canada. Also about the options that you have apart from Canada, because Canada is not the end of the world. We'll talk about all of those in other videos that I'm planning to make in the days to come. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please click the subscribe button. Do not forget to share this video with your friends or family who might be interested in moving to Canada as an international student. If you have any comments, feedback or queries, please put them down in the comment section below. And yes, you know the deal. Do not forget to click the subscribe button before moving on to the next video. Thanks again.